welcome back to Z-Speed and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to repair this Honda Accord power window switch for free. You can't beat that price, so stay tuned and let's see if we can tackle this one. So this repair is specific to the child safety lock on the 7th generation Hondas, especially the Honda Accord. A lot of these master power window switches seem to short out. And I don't know if there was ever a recall or not, but once you hit this button one too many times, it will lock you out permanently of all your passenger windows. The good news is that your driver's side will still work, but you're now locked out of the rest of the windows. And I'm going to show you a free fix here versus buying a brand new master power window switch, which can get quite pricey. Now, all you need to do this is a soldering iron and a steady hand. And the good news is I've been running this for several months and I've had no problems with electrically any other short outs or any type of weird fires or anything unusual like that. Everything's working great. So I'm gonna go ahead and certify this as a temporary / permanent fix, whichever you want to do. If you want to go buy a new switch later on, go right ahead, but I'm going to show you how to fix it for free. I went ahead and used a plastic panel remover to go ahead and pull this loose, and it comes out quite easy. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it out for you and show you there's just two little connectors that hold this thing in once you flip it out, and it's quite easy to unbuckle those. But before we do that, we're going to test it to see if that's really the problem. And there's a good way to test it with a little piece of speaker wire to make sure that that's the problem. And if this little test works, then we know that we can fix it with a soldering iron. So let me show you how to do that. So all we need to do to perform this test is grab a little piece of speaker wire stripped on either end, and maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches, and we're going to bypass the child safety lock. And all we need to do to test this is go ahead and turn your accessory mode on so that you've got power to the window switch. So you don't have to turn the engine on or anything, just turn the accessory mode on, and then we'll be ready to bypass this. So you're going to take your little piece of speaker wire, and it's easier to do with two hands. Of course, I got the camera in another hand, so I'm gonna have to set the camera down in a minute to fix this. But right here, this little black wire in the very corner is one of the wires that we're going to jam this into. Then we're gonna go ahead and try to complete the other side. You see it fell out. So I start with the green and white wire, and it's got little silver markings on it as well. And it's just 3 wires down, you can see right there. So I got that to go in finally, but this green and white with little silver markings on it. And then right here on the corner, this black wire with little silver markings on it as well. So at this point, I actually had to set the camera down to stuff that wire in there, but I got the little wire stuffed in there, and I was able to bypass the circuit. And sure enough, I was able to roll all my windows down with this little bypass. So that tells me that we can go ahead and take the switch out and do some work on it. So all we have to do is push in on this tab right here, and that'll slip right on out of the master switch. Same with this one, piece of cake. All you have to do is push down on that and it slides right out. Now we can take our switch once we've got it disconnected, and we can take it into the garage here, and we can do some fine tuning on this thing. Okay, at this point we have to remove 4 Phillips screws to get the switch free of this little panel. Be careful with this little piece of panel. Even though it's got the carbon fiber on one side and the back side's plastic, it's very flimsy, and you can see it flexes quite a bit here. When I go to remove the screw, it just flops back and forth, so don't want to break that. Be careful, just be real gentle with it. So we got basically, like I said, 4 little Phillips screws to remove this switch. Now right here, that's a no-no. I went up to the front and removed this little screw, and we do not have to touch this one at all. That's the rear view mirror control, and we're not going to be touching that switch at all. So I'll actually put that back in once I realize that I'm not going to be using that. But I've just got 2 more screws to go, and we can separate this switch from this little plastic housing, and then we can start working on that. And now this piece should slide right out, which it does. And this is the part we'll be working with. So we can set this aside. I'm gonna go ahead and put this little screw back in so I don't lose it. And then we're ready to disassemble the master switch here. Okay, one last thing we need to do before we can actually start disassembling this is that we have to remove the button, the child safety button, the one that started the whole problem to begin with. Pull that off, it unclips pretty easily, and then we're ready to start disassembling the switch here. Now we're ready to remove the housing from the circuit board. You've got 4 tabs along the bottom. There's 3 of the tabs. There's one on the very end that I didn't show. A nice flathead screwdriver is all you need, a very small one in fact. And you just slide it in between this and just push down. Is all it takes is a bit of force, and this thing will just pop loose. You can see I'm kind of overdoing it there. Be careful. It's very thin plastic and it could fracture pretty easily, so just take your time and be very gentle. We don't want to crack the housing or break part of it while we're disassembling. And so you can see now I've got it separated, and it should slide right out theoretically, but it's not, and that's my fault because I missed one Phillips screw right down in here. You're going to need a very small Phillips screwdriver. This one's a little too large, as you can see right here. I'm going to have to get a smaller one, and we're going to go in and take that out, and then we should be able to separate this plastic housing from the circuit board. And you can see I'm just going to unscrew it right here, and it doesn't take a lot of force. It comes right out. Once you get these separated, then we're down to the meat and potatoes of the situation, and we've got the circuit board right there. That's what we're going to be working on. You can move this cover right here, get that out of the way, and now we're ready to actually figure out what we're going to be soldering here. Okay, let's take a look at the circuit board. I'm going to be calling these posts for this video, but you may call them something else. I don't know what the exact term is, but I'm going to call them posts. And this is your reference points right here, this little white dot. And we're going to go to this row right here. Next to this white dot, 3 over 1, 2, 3. This little post right here is what we'll be bridging with our speaker wire, and we're using a small piece of speaker wire to do this. And then we're going to go to the opposite side over here, 4 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll be attaching it right here, 4th one down. And you will definitely need a small piece of wire, so you may have to experiment, look around for a somewhat small piece of wire to attach these two. You don't want anything too large because these posts are so small. A piece of wire this big would be way too big, and we don't want to end up bridging the post next to the one that we're working on, so we have to go with something kind of small here. So take your time and find the correct size before you get started. This is the size I'm going to be using right here. So the first thing you want to do is heat your speaker wire up, and then heat your solder up, and just put just a tiny little dab of solder on each end, and that's all we're really going to need. We're not going to need a lot of solder because we're going to be using most of the solder that's already on the circuit board. Okay, now we're ready to take our speaker wire that's pre-prepped and ready to go and place it onto the circuit board. We're going to try the larger post first so we can get used to working with this tiny little circuit board. So I'm going to heat the top of the post up until I can see the solder start to soften and melt. Once I get that solder hot enough and it starts to liquefy, I'm going to go ahead with my other hand and place that speaker wire right in on the soft solder, and hopefully we can get it to attach. So it may take a little bit, it may take a few minutes, just depends on how hot your iron is. So don't rush it. And right here I think I've got it warm enough now, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a try, see if I can get this wire to attach, and let's see what happens here. I thought I got it. Nope, no go. You can see it just wasn't quite hot enough, so I'm going to try it again. And this time it works. I've got it soldered on there, and you want to let it cool. At this point, you're going to make sure it's nice and hardened before you flex the wire and try to solder the other end. So make sure it's nice and cooled down before you even move the wire. Okay, I didn't say a lot about the size of the speaker wire earlier, but you want to experiment with your speaker wire before you even start the project and get it just long enough so that you can flex the wire between the two posts with this just a little bit of slack, not a lot. You don't want it to be too long and floppy, but obviously you don't want it too short either, so just experiment with it until you get the proper length. And you can see how long mine is and try to match that. And now we're going to go ahead and start working on the more difficult post. Now you can see it's very tiny here, and there's not a lot of solder on the board. So as I started to heat this up, I realized, I'm going to need to add a little bit more solder to this end of the wire. And it's always easy to go back and add just a little bit of solder. So if you didn't put enough on earlier, just go back and add a little bit to it, but I needed some more because there just wasn't quite that much on the board to work with. And what you want to be careful of course, is not to bridge the post next to it. So this is definitely a little delicate here, and you really have to take your time. And you might even want a magnifying glass just to look through and check it out, because you don't want to bridge the post next to it, just that one single post. And take your time, and you can see I added just a little more solder, and that gave me what I needed to get it attached. And now we're ready to put this thing back together and give it a test. So we just want to slide this little cover right back over your circuit board, and then we're going to pop on the little button that we pulled off earlier, the little child safety button. Pop that back on, and then flip it over and place that little phillips screw back in, and we can attach the whole assembly back on to the little mount that fits into the door, and we are ready to give it a test. Once you get it all reassembled, you can plug the harness back in and pop it into the door, and we're ready for a test run. So just turn on your auxiliary mode and let's see if this thing works. Here we go, moment of truth, and that's a winner. Look at that, rolls down perfectly. All three of my windows worked great, so I'm very happy about that. And like I said earlier, I have been running it for several months with no electrical issues, so this is a great free fix. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll definitely get back to you. And if you would like to subscribe, please do. Give me a thumbs up. and Z-Speed will be back soon with another one. Until then, just keep on repairing.